All right, today is Monday, August the 28th, 2017. The time being about 1:43 p.m. I'm here with somebody that I have high honors for, high respects for, and normally I don't say that for the NAACP because of the town that I live in, Charleston, Missouri. But that's another story. I want this individual to introduce himself, to tell you what he do, not for government grant money, but volunteer, him and other groups, and he does a real good job of it. It was because of him and other people volunteering their time that a 48-year-old black man that's in Bontour, Missouri, on death row, he would have been executed on the Tuesday, August the 22nd, 2017. If it wasn't for this particular man and other people. And he'll get credit to them too. And I got high honors. We in Clayton, Missouri, he just had a press conference concerning some things, and he'll let you know what that was.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ivey. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I'm Nimrod Chappell, president of the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP. The Missouri State Conference has done a few things recently. Most recently, Marcellus Williams was sentenced to execution by death. He was set to have died on August the 22nd, 2017. Governor Eric Greitens, with his excellent decision with the executive order, spared his life, but at the same time called for a commission to determine whether there was actual innocence. Now, there are very few cases where there's actual innocence, and I say that, very few cases that we hear about. Mr. Williams is a case that we had been reviewing in NAACP since before 2015, and he was granted a new review of the evidence by a court. That evidence, however, was not actually reviewed by the court, and that's what led to some of the questions. I have to say that I was just a small piece in a much larger, coordinated effort to ensure that justice is done in this case. Marcellus Williams was stayed from execution at about 1:37 p.m. We were headed up to St. Louis to do a rally for justice, calling on the governor to intercede to save his life. Before we could get there, the governor took action and did it in a decisive and a correct and right way. Now, the forces that led to that, that's why we're here today. We had a press conference related to Bob McCullough and statements that he had made saying that there is zero chance that Marcellus Williams was innocent or that there were mistakes made at trial. We think that as a prosecutor, we have to stand for justice and truth, that we've got an ethical obligation to do that, and that means not undermining government's commitment to ensure that truth is afforded. In this case, Marcellus Williams would have been dead, but for 250,000 people from around the country standing up through change.org. If you haven't visited that site, I strongly encourage you to do so. There is a lot of information about Marcellus Williams and questions raised in the case. For example, how is it that he was excluded by DNA evidence from this crime? How is it that some of that DNA evidence is still yet to be considered by a government body in terms of the Court of Appeals or the Missouri Supreme Court? Why is it that blacks were excluded from the jury that convicted Marcellus Williams? There were 7, they got rid of 6 down to 1. Surely all people who are members of society and call for jury duty not only deserve the right to serve on those juries, but ought to be afforded an opportunity to determine the guilt or innocence of people in their communities. That is a trial by your peers. I also would be remiss not to mention the Missourians against the death penalty through the great works of people like Stacey Pratt, their executive director, and their board of directors, of which I'll be candid, I sit. And we have one of them that sits on our board of our executive committee for the NAACP. We have a committee dedicated to the abolition of the death penalty because we know that the American Bar Association impaneled a group of lawyers and judges from around the state, including scholars, and they determined that the way that the death penalty is applied in Missouri is unfair. It's not right, it's not just, biased as to color and poverty. For our demographic at the NAACP, that hits everybody that we're talking about. Unfortunately, justice, if it were a commodity, would not be afforded to the poor as it is to the rich. That was the determination of the ABA's panel and their work. I want to thank people like Mr. Ivey for bringing truth to the statement that we as citizens have the ability to make a statement, that we have a voice, and that we have to use those voices to not be complicit with the injustices that we see going on in the United States. in our communities, or in our own homes. That we've got to be the first to say what's right and what's wrong, and that standing by that means something. Now, lots of volunteers work throughout the state and the NAACP and other organizations. Without those people doing long hours and hard work for no compensation, I'm not sure that justice would be reached in the same way. If you are working in your community and you believe in justice and equality and want to see those values not just passed down from your lips to the ears of your children, but to be made a reality for those children and grandchildren, now is the time to act. Missouri is on the precipice. We're at a level where we're concerned that this travel advisory is not doing everything that it should. Injustices that we complained about in the advisory still continue to go forward. While we see that Marcellus Williams' life has been spared, we unfortunately have to deal with the comments of a state prosecutor, a prosecutor from the St. Louis County area named Bob McCullough. Those statements, we believe, undermine credibility in our system of justice. Missouri can't afford that now. We need everyone to understand that as Americans, we have a right to expect to seek redress, whether in the criminal justice system or the civil system. Likewise, with Senate Bill 43 that became law today on August the 28th, 2017, we have lived to see the birth of Jim Crow in Missouri. It took decades to get it away. We still feel the effects of what was under the old system, so we're still not free in many ways. That's the work of the NAACP seeking justice and equality. It hurts so bad, not just for people in the organization, but for everyone. As you know, I've called this hyped up Jim Crow. And I call it hyped up Jim Crow because the old Jim Crow used to be against people of color. And it was pretty much exclusively that way. It was a travesty. It was not in our moral line. It was not within our faith tradition. And it was not even within the laws. So they bent the laws to accommodate it. Well, here we are. We're bending the laws to allow discrimination against women, against seniors, against those with disabilities, real and perceived, against people from other countries, and of course people of color. That's not right. It's not American. And I don't believe it stands for the moral virtues that Missouri believes in. If you have an opportunity, please call your state representative, your senator, or the governor and ask them why they voted for this bill. It's Senate Bill 43. Please look it up on the internet. The NAACP has sources that are available to you, and if you went to our website at www.monaacp.org, www.mo.naacp.org. You can find those resources there, as well as information about meetings and other ways that you can be active in your community. We want you to be a valuable participant in this community and this society, and that we believe in order to do that, we've got to stand together. Please stand with the NAACP. And if I can ask you just for one final thing, please stay tuned. The issues that we're facing in Missouri are not likely to go away quickly. We are deeply concerned not only with the civil rights violations on the criminal justice side, where people of color are routinely pulled over more frequently than our Caucasian brothers and sisters, and have less results. That is, that they have less violations, less infractions, less contraband, less warrants than the majority population. That's not fair. It's not right. We shouldn't be under a constant threat of being pulled over every time we get in a car to go to work, to go home, to visit our churches, to participate in our communities. That's not right. Additionally, we see that in the criminal justice system, people are being excluded from their ability to participate in the jury system. We don't believe the prosecutors have that right or the authority to make those decisions. When we see it, we've got to stand up. So the Missouri NAACP, and Mr. Ivey, I'm proud to announce this here with you now, has reopened its NAACP helpline, 844-NAACP-HELP, H-E-L-P, 844-NAACP-HELP. I'll tell you a few things about the line. We don't have paid staff, so we don't have receptionists. We do have some volunteers. If you call, leave a message, we'll get the message and do our best to return that call just as quickly as possible. If you're in a life-threatening emergency, though, you must call the police. Call 911. We don't have the authority nor the resources to come and save a person who's in a life-saving emergency, and that's best put with those who are paid to do so publicly. However, you can leave a message or call someone who may be at the number and share the information that you've shared with authorities or law enforcement so that we can follow up with them. And in the same way, if you've been a victim of discrimination or harassment on or off the job in your private life, whether you're going to a restaurant or seeking health care or education at a school, whether you're looking for housing or whether you're experiencing something on the job, we want you to call that number. Share with us your concerns. If we can help, we want to. If we can guide you in the direction of resources, we want to. But most importantly, your voice has got to be heard. We're collecting this information and data, and we will be supplying that to the appropriate people so that they can ascertain the violations and try to figure out if redress can be had. In some cases, there won't be. Time has passed, people have passed, injustices have been solidified in the history of time. In other places, we'll be able to make a great impact, and we intend to do so. And again, we ask for your help. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you a lot, Mr. Nimrod. You said a mouthful, and I know people that watches my YouTube videos, which is over 80,000 people. I just want to let y'all know I look up to Mr. Nimrod because he didn't have to be here today. I didn't know Marcellus Williams from Adam. But what I want to ask him is that 1-800 number, is that nationwide or is that just in certain locations for the helpline?
That helpline is an 800 number, so anybody in the United States or the world, as far as I'm concerned, is encouraged and invited to call. We'll do our best to make sure that information gets quantified and passed on to jurisdictions if it's not within the state of Missouri.
And the last question I want to ask you before this interview ends, because I know both of us have to go to the different destinations. Have you ever heard of Charleston, Missouri?
I have.
Have you known of Charleston, Missouri a long time, or did something happen, or somebody brought it to your attention? What brought you to the attention to Charleston, Missouri? Because it's a small town of 5,947 people.
Well, there are a number of issues that came to my attention. One, we've had concerns with what happens in your prison there, both to the inmates and the people who work in the Department of Corrections. We've done our best in the organization and me individually to do justice by some of those folks. We're not done. We understand that in the community there are great concerns about the criminal justice system at work there and the ability of people to seek redress. That in particular there are violations that must be addressed and must be accounted for. And so we're working right now to do that. I deeply appreciate you and your efforts because your videos allow us to see a glimpse into what's occurring in everyday life without our ability to actually be there. You're recording information that can be shared in a number of ways, not only among people on Facebook and YouTube, but also with people in the federal and state government, and affords them an opportunity to have a voice and to make sure that all people are treated equally. Also, my journey with the Boot Hill, it really began with Heather Ellis. That was the first time I ever came down, where she was accused of assaulting a number of officers, even though she ended up with double knee operations and in the hospital herself. A young cheerleader accused of assaulting officers. Hard to believe, but if you can remember, there was a prosecutor who was there then that prosecuted a case that no one could understand. There are issues and forces at work in Southeast that need to be brought to light. The NAACP will continue to work with our friends and members down there to make sure that we don't have to suffer in silence, that we all have the rights of Americans.
I thank you a lot, and I'm going to end this here by saying peace be still.